Don't worry about it.
Okay, well, oh well. When are you thinking about streaming tomorrow?
I don't know.
Great.
I haven't looked
Because my
into it too
train
much.
my train leaves short of 5, so
Well, then you
if you
probably
want
wouldn't be
my
able to help regardless.
yeah,
It's
you're
fine. I
welcome.
can deal
Oh
with it
no!
myself.
Oh no! Lightman was part of the new day one.
Oh, really?
It's over.
It's separated into two different 10%.
2.
Yes. They cut it off at the border of
Did
Kansas and
Central
Oklahoma.
just get? Oh, okay.
So they have one in western Kansas. They have one in central Oklahoma. They also gave the central Oklahoma one, obviously, the actual, SIGTOR risk. So they still believe that that is the main threat there, central Oklahoma. But they also believe that these low top storms over here in western Kansas are probably going to be the ones to, consider. They also still kept the 5 tour over in southern Mississippi, so that's something to consider. Although that doesn't really make sense a whole lot,
No, it's
in that regard.
outflow dominant. It's all outflow dominant.
Yeah. But that's the latest news there as we transition from us talking to each other to us talking to you at home. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Nate. That is Morgan J. Fold. We also have a couple chasers that we will get to in a bit. And we are here to cover a pretty gnarly little May risk. May, spring,
May,
severe
Oklahoma
weather.
are two words that go really, really, really well together.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. So it's going to be very interesting. One thing I must ask of you all before we continue, please be sure to hit that thumbs up button down below to help us spread this information with as many people as possible, because that's what we're going to need here today. We're going to want to continue to try and get this information out to more and more people. And of course, because we have the tools and the resources necessary to actually get you guys critical information here today, such as chasers, live cameras, all sorts of stuff like that, we want to make sure that you guys get all the information that you possibly can, but we also want to make sure that we spread it with as many people as we possibly can as well. So please be sure, if you haven't already, hit that thumbs up button down below. And if you see people in the chat that are new, please be sure to tell them to do the exact same thing. All right. With that being said, we do have a nice little risk for severe weather here today. This does include a very large 3 out of 5 in the severe weather scale, which is kind of an unusually shaped pattern. We usually don't see stuff like this, let alone in May. So if you guys live, all right, and I will take the radar and I will take the watches off. If you live in the yellow or in the orange here today, you guys should definitely watch out for severe weather. All right, we're talking strong damaging winds, we're talking large hail, and maybe even the chance for a few tornadoes, some of which, if you're in central Oklahoma, could be strong. So definitely something to watch out for that. I've seen people on YouTube have their titles with deadly tornadoes. I think that is very premature, and if anything, incorrect for that to actually be the case. So please, please, please try not to pay too much attention to it until the storms actually do occur. And it seems if there is going to be anything for that instance or that chance, it's going to be very conditional. So I wouldn't worry too much about it if you guys see that. And once again, this is kind of the risk here today. It's pretty elongated, it's pretty large, but the good news is the major portion of the risk seems to be only consolidated within one spot, which is actually, as I mentioned, here in central Oklahoma. So there's only really 2 states that are going to be getting the main activity here. That would be Kansas, specifically western and central, as well as south central Kansas, and then of course central Oklahoma. Those would be the areas to really watch out for the most. So if you guys live in those areas, please be sure to be weather aware here today. And speaking of weather aware, we move over to an ongoing tornado warning, which is over into portions of northeastern Goodland. This is specifically Sherman County here, and that'll be in effect until 2:15 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time. So if you live northeast of Goodland near the Edison area, it is recommended that you guys go ahead, take your proper precautions, get underground, or get into your lowest, innermost part of your building, particularly a bathroom or a closet with no windows, so you can put as many walls between yourself and the tornadic rotation as possible. It looked like earlier that it may have actually had the possibility of producing a tornado, and it still kind of does. It actually looks like it's intensifying as of this moment. But the good news about these storms here in Kansas, all right, this is one thing that I think everyone could take away from this system here today, and that is it appears to me that these storms in Kansas are going to produce weak tornadoes. And that is the good news, all right? Because, you know, whenever you hear tornadoes, you think of destruction, you think of violent stuff, you know, you think of, you know, all sorts of weird things that occur with tornadoes. The good news here for these tornadoes today is they will be very comparable to strong surges of wind, strong downbursts that will be in upwards about 80, 90, maybe 100 miles per hour. And that sounds intense. All right, but compared to what we could be seeing over in Oklahoma, or let alone on any other day that contains major severe weather, this doesn't really hold a candle to it. So that's the good news there. If we call a tornado warning for you guys, regardless of where you live, we still want you to get into the interior most portion of your building, as well as the lowest most portion of that building as well. But just to kind of ease the stress a little bit for people who may be in Kansas, that's what we're seeing here so far. We're seeing potentially weak tornadoes that quickly spin up and then quickly die out. They won't be those long track supercells that you typically see with most significant severe weather events. So that's the good news. All right. Take that into consideration if you guys can. But we still, once again, have that tornado warning. This is for Sherman County. Northeastern Sherman County here in Kansas. And the other thing here to consider as well is I take the radar off. I show you this thing is in the middle of nowhere. I mean, once you get north of Goodland, north of I-70, you kind of just have nothing but farm. And that's exactly what we have here. Not really a whole lot of people that are impacted. Maybe a building or two is definitely possible. And actually,
kind of like that first tornado warning that we had yesterday that was only hitting trailheads.
Yeah. And, you know, just for reference, if you guys want to actually see how many people actually live within this tornado warning, it's 26. The population of the people who live within this tornado warning is 26 people. So there's not really a whole lot of people. Of course, we're still going to look at the tornado warning because on the off chance that, you know, one of those 26 people are watching this stream somehow, we want to tell them to get into the interior most portion of their building, the lowest interior most portion of their building. So just something to note with that. But, you know, we also can say for a fact that this storm, you know, just continues to just not be super strong. And that's the good news with those storms.
Probably weakening as we speak.
Yes, I do agree. New mesoscale discussion just got issued for Mississippi. It says a line of storms may continue to produce some damaging wind gusts as it moves east this late afternoon.
Still a 5 tour there.
Yes, there is still a 5 tour there, which is very good. But I mean, I guess you can't take away from that risk there because of the Boeing segment. You don't know, you know, you just never know.
Yeah. Spin ups.
Yep. We also want to inform you all that about, I would say, half an hour to 45 minutes ago, there was a mesoscale discussion that was issued for Oklahoma. That would be for the main risk for severe weather here today. And what they said about that was that a tornado watch was more than likely going to be issued here at the top of the hour, which would be at around 5 Eastern for Central. So something to kind of watch out for with that if you guys are, you know, in the area of Central Oklahoma. I want to also go back to this here real quickly. I want to go back to the outlook here for severe weather. And I mentioned at the beginning of the stream, if you were a part of the beginning of the stream, that this is separated into a bunch of different areas, more or less, a bunch of different areas for severe weather. We have one that is currently over in Kansas. This is this yellow area here, which is a 10% chance for tornadoes within a 25-mile radius. This one contains areas of Colby, Garden City, even areas, I believe this is near Dodge City. And yes, this is Dodge City, and it goes all the way over to Great Bend and Pratt. So if you know anyone that lives over there, just be mindful that we could see some sudden downbursts and maybe even some weak tornadoes in that area over there. We also talk about the tornadoes that could be possible across the OKC metro area. This one, if we switch over to the significant tornado risk, is only localized here. It will only be here in central Oklahoma here today. So if you are in OKC or anywhere around OKC, whether that's on I-40, I-44, or I-35.
Finals week at OU.
Yeah, you're going to want to watch out for the threat of significant tornadoes here today. A lot of meteorologists are probably thinking more of I-40 and south. That's what I've heard. I-40 and south to the Red River is kind of the area to watch, more or less. But you can't, disregard the threat of areas near OKC and north of OKC that could potentially see something tornadic. So something to watch out for. But I have heard meteorologists and some Storm Prediction Center meteorologists say that's kind of the area where they would watch out for the most. And then, of course, finally, we have our risk for severe weather, which started earlier on this morning. That started in central portions of Louisiana and even northern portions of Louisiana heading off into southern Arkansas. And it is further elongated into a giant squall line, a big bow echo that is surging through the portions of the Jackson metro area. This will head off
New tornado warning.
southeast. That is a new tornado warning. Hopefully we get
It's
that
in Colorado.
Yeah. All right.
Where we have 0 radars, exactly.
Yeah.
But that might actually be producing a tornado right now.
Mhm.
Probably is. On
Sup,
United States Route
Chris?
6.
Tornado warning for
If you're east of Holyoke on United States Route 6, south of Amherst on 23, you need to be taking your proper precautions underground or lowest innermost part of your building. 176. Colorado 176. South of Amherst, you need to be taking your proper precautions. The storm is moving northwest, will split in between Amherst and Holyoke. So if you are dead split between Amherst and Holyoke on 176, you need to be in your safe space. In addition, if you're on United States Route 385 north of Holyoke by about 5 or 10 miles, also need to be in your safe space as the storm is projected to go right over you. If you're north and east of Paoli, north of United States Route 6 as well, you need to still be in your safe space as well. Looks like a very discreet storm. Definitively not moving in the direction that we would typically say. So you know how usually what I say is this will continue to progress off towards the north and east. This is not progressing off towards the north and east. This is progressing off towards the north and west.
Yeah.
So if you're in Holyoke, Amherst, north and east of Paoli, you need to be in your safe space in your tornado shelters. Also, Nate, watch that storm that's by Colby
Yes.
in Kansas.
Yes. I want to shout out some people here in the chat because I see them in the chat frequently, especially with the recent live streams. Chris, thank you so much for coming out. Of course, all the moderators, by the way. Moderators are amazing. And we thank you for keeping everything sane in the chat, as we know you guys have a very difficult job over there. Sage, I've been seeing you recently. Thank you so much for coming out. And hello. Talking about tornado clips as well. I see them almost every single stream. So thank you so much for coming out as well. Mike, I see you almost every single stream in both channels. So thank you so much for coming out. Tommy, what's up? And everyone else in the chat as well. Thank you guys so much for coming out. So just a reminder here, the main area of severe weather is going to be for areas in southern Nebraska or southwestern Nebraska. We're also talking extreme eastern Colorado, much of Kansas with the exception of the Kansas City metro. Practically anywhere in the eastern portions of Kansas, you're not really going to see a whole lot of stuff. Central Oklahoma, so northern and central as well as southern. Potentially even a little bit of Texas near the Red River. It is definitely possible. And then, of course, we're also talking about central and southern Mississippi. You guys could potentially watch out for that as well. I also want to shout out Lisa. So we have Lisa Thornton, Lisa Thompson. I see you guys in the chat a lot as well. Thank you guys so much for coming out as well. I really do appreciate that. And of course, all of our members, YouTube members who constantly, supply the channel and help support it, keep us afloat. Really do appreciate you guys as well.
That's helpful.
Let us take a look back. Actually, you know what? Let's look a little bit more in depth. Morgan was talking about the storm a lot. There was actually a camera over in Holyoke. There was.
And it doesn't exist.
It doesn't work. Because
no, it's just not there.
No, go to the box at the bottom right-hand side and turn on cameras that are inactive. It's inactive as of this moment, which sucks.
Well, the next best thing is Lone Mountain, and unfortunately,
that's pretty far away.
It's raining. So
yeah. But one thing we can do, even though this is pretty far away from the radar, I think this is pretty distinguishable in regards to our rotation here. Contrast to everything around. Don't laugh at me. Go away.
Didn't say a word.
You can tell where it is. You can tell.
Thanks, Kansas.
This is pretty evident, especially with how far away from the radar we are. And we're looking up 9,400 feet, and we still can see this. So this right here is indeed a tornadic thunderstorm, a tornadic supercell. Well, not really a supercell. It's low-topped, so we can't really call it. Well, is it, though? This thing is almost pressing up to 40,000 feet. So this is this might be a supercell that is embedded within all of this mess. So, indeed, this is a bit more of a tornadic storm that will head off towards the north and west. We're talking Colorado Highway 23 as well as US Highway 385. And this is going to be north of Highway 6. So if you're on Highway 6 right now, you guys should be all right. All right, but it's just areas north of Highway 6. We're talking areas in between Holyoke and Amherst in Colorado that could potentially get their activity here.
That Colby storm is looking.
Yeah, there is a camera over in Colby, so let's go take a look. It's in a book.
Not useful. It's not useful.
Well, we're not taking a look. It's in a book anymore.
It's looking east.
Oh boy. If you guys are enjoying the content so far, please be sure to leave a like. That does help us spread the information with more and more people on YouTube. And if you see anybody new in the chat, please be sure to tell them to do so as well. So that way we can continue to spread the information of the severe weather that is definitely going to be possible here today.
Man, I'm just skimming some of these cameras in general. Kansas looks real depressing today.
Yeah, it's not exactly the greatest thing to look at, but
it's 60 degrees. Yeah, you know, 60 and rain is not exactly the most fun conditions.
I understand that. Excuse me.
That outflow boundary is continuing to expand.
Not again. Not again.
What?
Canada.
What? Are you no?
That Colby storm just got a tornado.
Canada.
If you are, frick you, Canada. You're northwest of Colby, north of Levant, west of Kansas State Route 25. You need to be taken to your tornado shelters, underground or lowest innermost part of the building. And man, that thing, whew, that might have two separate rotations. North of Levant, north of United States Route 24. It's really not hitting much of anything. And in fact, I'm going to just reference how many
people live within that.
Yeah, the population of this warning is 145. So if you happen to be one of the 145 that live in these areas of Rawlins and Thomas County in Kansas, you need to get into your tornado shelters, underground or lowest innermost part of your building, again, north of Levant, northwest of Colby. That storm, it's got a ZDR arc. You know what?
The one thing that I will say about this storm here, because this is where we can get a little bit technical now since we're this close to the radar, I want you guys to take a look at where it was before on its approach to Colby. This is where I believe it was. This is another storm right here. We got some other storms that are around it. To me, it seems it has completed a successful merger, all right, with a couple others.
It's also note
Yeah,
this.
this
It's also
is-
about to intersect the outflow boundary, so this could produce a tornado here fairly soon.
So that's the original storm right there. And this is another storm that was south of it. And I believe both of them have combined. Both of them have combined into a cell merger. It is now a little bit more of a supercellular structure. You can see the hook that kind of wraps around just like that. The inflow also coming in around. And I believe because of how close we are to the radar, we might be able to get a 3D on it. So let's go take a look. Let's see if I can organize this. And yes, indeed. Wow, that is a very small looking inflow notch, but that's kind of the types of storms that we're going to be anticipating here today. These little mini storms that end up kind of spinning along the side. Right there is your updraft. All right, so the rain gets picked up and it gets shot up into the upper portions of the storm. Moisture, however, comes into this little area right here. You see that cave right there, chat? That right there is where that moisture that is in the atmosphere, that is more towards the ground as well, that is starting to settle, starting to increase the relative humidity around. That relative humidity is going to be channeled right into that inflow notch, and that is going to allow the storm to continue to form or sustain, maybe even intensify as well. And so that is a very interesting storm. I also want to take a look at the normalized rotation, because this can actually quantify as to not only where rotation would be, but how strong it could be. And indeed, there is rotation. This is indeed a low-top supercell that is identified right within here on the normalized rotation on 3D. And this goes up well above 10,000 feet. You can see this actually goes up to probably about 12 to 13,000 feet, which is kind of crazy for the types of storms that are expected here in Kansas. So very interesting here as to what's moving off towards the north and west. The good news, as Morgan has pointed out, there is not really a whole lot of people that live within this tornado warning, but this is definitely one of the storms that we should watch out for as this continues to get closer to Highway 36. So watch out for that. That is going to be something to, be monitored. This is really a heck of a storm. You mentioned earlier there was a ZDR arc. Indeed, there is. That also means that this storm is going to be intensifying, especially when you see a supercell. All right, so if you can imagine the storm hooking around, or even something like this nature, where the storm kind of elongates itself with the body of the storm on the southern portion, or not really the southern, but on the bottom portion of the storm. So in this instance, it would be right here at this forward flank downdraft. If you see a high value of differential reflectivity here, we're talking the yellows, oranges, and reds that are all consolidated within an arc like this. This tells you that this storm is going to want to try and intensify further. And so when we see that, of course, you can kind of put two and two together. Even if this storm is as small as it is, I'm going to measure, all right, how large this storm actually is. This storm, believe it or not, is around 5 miles long, all right? The length of this storm is 5 miles. That doesn't really happen with a whole lot of storms and severe weather. This is a mini supercell event, a mini thunderstorm event that can produce your quick spin-ups, your quick tornadoes, but just because they're smaller doesn't mean that they can't do what the bigger ones can. That is what we're trying to get across here. So for right now, it's not hitting anything. That's the good news. Bird City and McDonald over in Kansas up here to the north and west of it, though, because this storm is heading northwest. You guys are going to want to watch out very, very closely, especially if this thing continues to sustain. This thing could definitely produce a tornado on its approach to you all. So Rollins County and Cheyenne County. Cheyenne, you don't have a tornado warning as of right now, but if this thing does continue, it will head off towards the north and west, and it could potentially impact your guys' area. Right now, it is Thomas and Rollins counties. You have a tornado warning here in Kansas. That'll be in effect until 3:45 p.m. Central Daylight Time. But very interesting here as this continues to move off towards the north and west. Wow. I mean, that is a heck of a little mini storm. That is pretty insane. What else is pretty insane is the fact that the United States is not the only place for their severe weather here today. Massive severe thunderstorm warning here. This is in eastern Ontario, not southern Ontario. So this is over near the Timmins area, north of Timmins. There is a supercell here. So this is what you would typically want to look for here in Oklahoma here today. If you see this in Oklahoma, you probably are going to have to assume that there's probably going to be severe weather or significant severe weather. And that's exactly what we have. We have a storm that is hooking around right within here. So on the southern portion of this forward flank, if we start to see high values of differential reflectivity, we can assume that this storm is going to intensify. And indeed, that is the case. You can see high values of ZDR that is going to allow this thing to continue to intensify as it moves off towards the east. You can see on the velocities, this is quite a bit of rotation. All right. The actual radar is to the north and west of the storm. Reds are the winds moving away. Grays and greens are the winds moving towards. Right in the middle is where the tornadic rotation would be. And this is going to cross over Highway 655 here in a second and head towards the Porquise Junction area, as well as the Nelly Lake area, as well as Connaught. So if you live over there in the eastern portions of Ontario, north of Timmins, you guys might want to watch out for a significant supercell that might head off towards your area. Now, whether or not this thing produces a tornado, I think that's something that is still yet to be determined. It kind of looks pretty messy as of right now. You can see the hook on the bottom side wrapping this rain around the rotation. We have a lot of rain around here in general, and we want to start to see that inflow notch kind of get cleared out a little bit more, kind of similar to what's happening in Kansas. And the fact that there is some rain in that inflow notch kind of means that it's kind of, I guess, cooling the atmosphere around it, limiting that warm moisture. All right, you'll get moisture, it just won't be warm, and storms kind of need that warm moisture to get into the core of the storm. So that is the main thing to take away from the storm as it heads off towards the east. But still something to watch out for over into eastern portions of Ontario. All right, let's take a look at this storm that is approaching Dodge City, because because this is a expansive risk here across the board here in western Kansas for severe weather. And I'm going to be completely honest with you here. We're not going to be seeing as much activity or as well-defined of activity as we usually would see here with this storm that is northwest of Colby. All right, this storm here that is northwest of Colby with this tornado warning right now is probably as good of a thunderstorm as you're going to see here in portions of Kansas.
Note the, Nate, if you want to look for yourself, note the outflow boundary that is about to intersect. Note the outflow boundary that is about to or is currently intersecting with this storm. So what this means is the outflow boundary is going to enhance the vorticity and shear in the immediate proximity of the
thunderstorm.
The tornado warning storm northwest Colby. That is currently on pace, and I think in the next few minutes we're going to see it put down a tornado, and it might not be the weakest one in the world. It might not be any of the spoots that Ryan was seeing yesterday. As this pushes off towards the McDonald area. So folks, you got to continue to watch this very seriously, even as this moves out of the warning. If we take storm track here, and GR2 lets us do that, as the warning dictates storm motion, the warning text dictates storm motion. This is going to move off towards the McDonald area in the next shy of 40 minutes-ish. So the progression of the storm, you do need to be watching this and monitoring it very closely. If we get a favorable cell merger, or if the storm continues to interact with the outflow boundary in a favorable manner for storm development, could be watching for a tornado here as this progresses off towards the United States Route 36.
Now, on the other hand, all right, as I said, that storm is probably an outlier for what we can see in Kansas. I mean, that storm looks...
It's basically an embedded supercell. It's basically an embedded supercell.
It's pretty much as good of a storm as you're going to see. But there is a new tornado warning there in Kansas. Yeah, that is new.
And that is moving really northwest.
Yeah, wow. This is for Gove County. Gove County, Kansas.
They also reported a tornado about 15 minutes ago.
That's what I was going to get to. All right. So a lot of these storms, actually, you know what? Let's just let you guys listen in here real quick.
Northwestern Gove County in west central Kansas.
So that's Gove County in west central Kansas. If you guys live in those areas, you need to get into your safe space right now, underground or lowest innermost part of your building, particularly a bathroom or a closet with no windows, so you can put as many walls between yourself and the tornadic rotation over there. But I want to mention here real quickly, a lot of these storms are just going to produce these quick spin up tornadoes, and it's going to be very difficult for not only just us to detect, but the National Weather Service to detect. And so whenever there's a tornado warning that is usually issued, unlike the storm that is northwest of Colby and northwestern portions of Kansas, a lot of these storms are probably going to produce their tornado, and then they're just going to go away for a little bit, and we're going to see a lot of these quick spin-ups. So if you see a storm that is over in western Kansas as of this moment, and you are currently being impacted by it, I would just recommend that you guys get indoors and stay away from windows, because it's going to be very difficult for us to be able to determine as to whether or not these things can produce tornadoes ahead of time. All right, unless, as I said, that storm in northwestern Kansas ends up, appearing all across the board. So that's the one thing that I kind of wanted to take away from you guys over with these storms as well. Yeah, that's what I noticed as well, Trevor. I don't know why it's so low. I really don't. Yeah, it seems really, really low in that sense. Very interesting. I got an idea then. We'll do that, and we'll do that. Go back up to there. All right, we'll see. We'll see how that works. I also want to mention here before we head off to Mississippi, okay, because Mississippi also has the threat for severe weather as well. So we don't want to forget about those guys over there. But I also want to mention the fact that we also still have a tornado warning over in northeastern Colorado. This is specifically for Phillips and Sedgwick County until 2:30 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time. This thing did have a pretty strong velocity couplet earlier on. As of right now, this is now kind of not as strong, if not even existent. So you guys should be fine, in my honest opinion, if you guys are over there. And as a matter of fact, as soon as I speak about it, it just immediately goes away. So therefore, no longer a tornado warning over in your guys' area over there. All right. Kansas over to Mississippi. Lot of severe weather across the board. All right. You can see there is a lot of severe thunderstorm warnings. It extends as far north as Grenada, all the way down to areas near Philadelphia, all the way down to I-20, and then there's even a storm over near Brookhaven as well in Mississippi, all right? In my honest opinion, there it is, opinion,
That's great.
that is English, great English, Nate. In my honest opinion, the only place that you can really see stuff that could be tornadic would be on the southern side of this Boeing segment, because from what I have seen, from what I have looked at with the models, this Boeing segment right here is primarily a damaging wind threat. And because of that, sure, they issued the tornado watch, but the tornado watch, the reason why they issued it was just on the off chance that storms end up starting to merge with each other, and you can get those quick spin-up tornadoes with those cell mergers if they do happen, if they do occur. So, realistically speaking, I don't see too much with these storms. If you're in a severe thunderstorm warning, get indoors, stay away from windows. All right, that's the main thing here that we want to kind of preach for anybody who's in a severe thunderstorm warning ever. You want to get indoors, you want to stay away from windows. But this specifically here in Mississippi, this looks like a bunch of wind. Looks like a bunch of wind. I don't see much of anything tornadic. I can look into it just a little bit more, but based off of the environment, it doesn't seem to be the case. And then there's one final thing that I can kind of use to determine that some of these other storms are not as tornadic. You see this little line right here that is out in front of all these other thunderstorms? That's an outflow boundary. And that outflow boundary is going to prevent a lot of that warm moisture that we've been talking about with a lot of these significant storms to get to a lot of these larger storms here in Mississippi. And so unless if there's a storm that's out in front of this outflow boundary, you're not really going to get tornadoes because a lot of these other storms are going to be pretty elevated. Everything's going to be very high up in the sky if there is any rotation. But the fact that there isn't any warm moisture that is going to get to the bottom of those storms makes it very difficult for a lot of these storms to actually do anything. So that's the one thing that I wanted to kind of mention for all of you who may live over into portions of Mississippi. I really do believe this is a wind and hail threat, if anything. That's a report of a tornado in Nebraska, because why not? Social media reports of a possible tornado rain wrapped in northern Dundee County. And that was a half an hour ago.
That was that was a while ago then.
Yeah, but they put it up anyways because the report. If you guys are enjoying the content so far, please be sure to hit that thumbs up button.
I know exactly what it is.
You do?
Scroll back to the 2009-22 frame and look at spectrum width. And there is your tornado. 2009-22 and look at spectrum width.
What?
And there is your tornado.
Really? That is the tornado. That is pretty funny.
Might also be another one doing it in your Enders. Again, different storm.
Maybe.
Similar idea.
Yeah, maybe. It is possible. It's another area of rotation.
If you're an Imperial or Enders on United States Route 6, consider finding a shelter of some kind. I don't know about a tornado shelter, but get inside.
Yeah, that does look like a little teeny area of rotation. And we're going to see a lot more of these guys, all right? If you're trying to see if we can find anything super significant tornado-wise, that won't be until a bit later on tonight. That won't be until probably around the 6 o'clock time frame central. That'll be down in central Oklahoma. And, it's a little conditional. What I mean by conditional is a lot of things have to go the storm's way in order for it to happen. But it is still something that is going to need to be considered, especially as it moves on through into a populous area like Oklahoma City. So that is something to note.
Yeah, I would seek shelter. If you're an Enders or an Imperial, I would seek shelter.
Yeah.
Knowing what other storms have done.
Let's first off, let's look at normalized rotation, because this is going to kind of quantify as to where and how strong the rotation actually is. This right here, south of Enders, this blue area, we don't focus on this kind of weird green spot. We focus on this blue spot right here. That is where the tornadic rotation exists. It is relatively weak, but as I said, that's what you're going to see over here in portions of Colorado, Nebraska, and Kansas. So nothing really too much else to say beyond that. If we go to the velocities in itself, the reds are the winds moving away from the radar, the greens are the winds moving towards, and the consolidation right in between. It's actually not too consolidated, believe it or not, because you can still see a lot of grays in between. So that's the one thing about the United States with their radars. Their radars are very high quality, contrast to Canada. And when you see these grays in between greens or bright greens and bright reds like that, that tells me that the rotation is a little bit broad. It's not really consolidated, and it's not really forcing its way down to the ground. So that's kind of the good news with that. Earlier, it definitely looked like it was. All right, this is the frame earlier, about 3 to 4 minutes ago. And you can see we have a lot more greens and reds touching, and there's not really any grays that are in between that. So definitely could have been a brief tornado that occurred as it approached the southern side of Enders, and as soon as we say that, the rotation starts to kind of dissipate as well. So same bat time, same bat channel. That's what I gotta say about that. Listen, Godzilla, I know you're concerned about Mississippi, but the fact of the matter is Mississippi is not the only area that is going to be impacted here today, let alone the area that is going to see the most impactful weather here today. There are ongoing tornado warnings over here in portions of Kansas, and we are anticipating a lot later on this evening some significant tornadoes that are possible in Oklahoma. So we want to make sure that we want to inform everyone, all right, everyone, about everything. You know, we want to try and make sure that everyone knows what's happening, especially as the storms are ongoing. This is no different. So we'll get to Mississippi. We talked about Mississippi about, what, 2-3 minutes ago. We're going to talk about Canada a little bit. We're going to go back to Kansas one more time, and then we'll go back to Mississippi. But if you want to, you can go back in time and you can go see what's happening over there in Mississippi with what I said earlier. All right, let's take a look here.
What?
Yeah, the Canada storm still is rotating.
No. I was talking about what happened to the storm down in Oakley. What is that?
I'm not too worried about that. Needs to consider.
It just merged, and now it looks weird.
The storm in Canada doesn't really look as much like a supercell now. I think what has happened is this thing has started to become a little bit more outflow dominant. It had a heck of a hook earlier. You can see the clear arcing of the storm just like that. It just seems as if there was a lot of rain that ended up getting in the inflow notch, which allowed it to kind of kill itself off. A lot of rain, a lot of cooling in the atmosphere within that area, and that allowed the storm to just not be able to put together a tornado, and in doing so, kind of created a bit more of a bowing segment. So a lot of strong damaging winds that are now going to approach the Connaught areas, as well as the Porquis Junction area, the Montauk area, the Nelly Lake area, the Monteith area, and the Valgagne areas over there into eastern portions of Canada. So watch out for that. It has passed Highway 655. That is the good news. But I don't really see anything more tornadic as of this moment. There might be a little bit of a spin up, maybe. But other than that, I just don't really see too much. I want to go down to Dodge City here real quickly, because we have a lot of these storms that are moving out and about. We have one that's actually approaching Dodge City that might actually try to do something in the near future. So that could be something to watch out for. Spearville and areas east of Dodge City. There is a storm that could even just be severe warned, honestly. We're talking localized hail, strong damaging winds, maybe even the chance for a spin up is possible. I do see that here. So Spearville, areas west of Windhorse, areas east of Dodge City here in Kansas. Guys might want to watch out for that as that continues to move off towards the north. So just something to note, just something that I wanted to point out. All right, let's go back to Mississippi here, and I'm only going to stay here for about a minute because realistically speaking, I'm going to say the same exact thing that I said about 5 minutes ago. Mississippi is not really going to be tornadic. If anything, it's going to be a lot of strong damaging winds, maybe even some spotty hail, but the fact of the matter is the environment is not really favorable enough for it to try and produce tornadoes as of this time. Sure, it has a tornado watch. That is precautionary. They issue it before the storms get into the area. But as of right now, from what I can tell, based off of the fact that we have multiple outflow boundaries preventing warm moisture to get into a lot of these storms, and this fact that there really isn't a whole lot of vorticity in this area to begin with, this tells me that there isn't going to be a whole lot of stuff besides strong damaging winds and large hail here in Mississippi. So if you're in Mississippi, if you're even in areas over near Memphis, watch out for 60-mile-per-hour wind gusts and quarter-sized hail. But other than that, you're not really going to see a whole lot beyond it, all right? So please be sure to take into consideration with that as that continues to move on through.
Tornado warning allowed to expire for the McDonald-Colby storm.
Speaking of that, let's go over and see what's going on with those storms. We also should be seeing here, we are getting closer and closer to the deadline the Storm Prediction Center has set out for themselves in regards to them potentially issuing a tornado watch. And in my opinion, they will. It's a 95% chance for issuing a tornado watch. There's a very good chance that they will issue one there in portions of Oklahoma. And it might even include portions of northern Texas. We'll see. But the big thing there is we are getting closer and closer towards the environment over in Oklahoma to start to really utilize that environment. So something to note. And just to kind of put it into perspective a little bit more, This is the threat for severe weather here today. This is the kind of zoomed out look as to where the severe weather can be. I will take the warnings off. I will take the watches, the mesoscale discussions, and I will take the radar off. And I will show you guys the outlook of severe weather here today. If you are in this light green, don't pay attention. We got just general thunderstorms, okay? If you're in this dark green, you can pay attention, but it's a 1 out of 5 in the severe weather scale, and usually stuff doesn't happen too much. If anything, it's general thunderstorms. 1 or 2 of them out of the entire risk might be severe, but other than that, not really too much. If you're in the yellow, that is a 2 out of 5 in the severe weather scale. We call that a slight risk. If you're in that area, you are going to want to pay attention for severe weather here today. And if you are in the orange, you are in a 3 out of 5 in the severe weather scale. We call that an enhanced risk. And if you are in the enhanced risk here today, you most certainly need to pay attention to the severe weather here today, whether that is for strong damaging winds, whether that is for large hail, or even the threat of tornadoes. Either way, you need to pay attention. Let's narrow into that tornado risk here real quickly. The green is representative of a 2% chance for tornadoes within a 25-mile radius. The brown is a 5%, and then the yellow is actually a 10%. And we have 2 different areas here in yellow to where there is the threat of tornadoes. We have one over in central portions of Oklahoma. We also have one that is over into portions of western and central Kansas. So if you live in those areas, you have to watch out. If you're in the brown areas, even though the risk is less than the main risk of tornadoes, you still are going to want to watch out because, I mean, I can tell you so many instances of how a 5% tornado risk has still produced tornadoes. We can even look into what's happened today. We've had a report of a tornado in the 2% risk. Now, sure, the 2% risk was right, the report was right next to the 5% risk, so it wasn't far off from where the actual 5% risk was, but the point still stands that tornadoes can happen in anywhere near the main area. And because of that, that is what we are going to want to watch out for the most. So just something to note, if you live in those areas there, you are going to want to watch out. If you live in the Oklahoma general vicinity, there is the risk for significant tornadoes as well. You see this kind of silver outline right here that kind of outlines the OKC metro area and the surrounding areas. This is your risk for significant tornadoes, and you notice this is only here in portions of Oklahoma. That is a new tornado watch. I won't say what the probabilities are. We're not going to spoil it. We play a little game. So for instance, the tornado watch that is over in Mississippi is 40-10. 40% chance of 2 or more tornadoes, 10% chance of 1 or more strong tornadoes. The one in Kansas is 50% chance of 2 or more tornadoes and 20% chance of 1 or more strong tornadoes. So, with that being said, the knowledge that you guys know over there down into the Oklahoma area, knowing that there is the threat for significant tornadoes.
Are we good? Are we good?
Says attempting to reconnect.
By the way, damage threat considering in Kansas.
Considerable, not considering.
No, it's damage threat considering in my book.
Whatever.